Peace, family. Welcome to another episode of Broken Theory. Today we got Anthony Church. What's going on, brother?
Hey man, glad to be here. Thanks for having me again. I'm excited, so I appreciate it.
I appreciate you making time, man. I was sitting there jamming out to some of your music, man, and I just want to know, when did you first get started with music?
Yeah, so I've been about 8 years in at this point. I started it in 2016, pretty much like right out of high school. My buddy and I, we took a senior trip to California. And that's kind of where we got inspired to make music. Like we were always fans of music. Like I've known him since we were probably since '04, so about 20 years is how long I've known him. But we grew up, we were just fans of music, and then when we got out of high school, we were like, we talked about doing music, but maybe we should actually do it. And then once we got back from our senior trip, we pretty much just began, and we kind of agreed that I was going to make beats for him and he was going to rap.
Oh, okay.
So that was pretty much how it started. I started I downloaded FL Studio. I ended up buying the normal version because I told myself, I was like, if I invest in this, I'll take it seriously. You know, if I get like the free version, cracked version, I'm probably not going to take it seriously. So I made that investment, did that, and just started watching YouTube tutorials and just kind of went from there. And I still work with him to this day. His name's J Trey. So we still work together, but that's kind of how it began for me. And then it kind of branched off into me working with different artists, kind of expanding online.
Yeah.
And then doing my own thing as well now. So 8 years in, and it's just been a cool journey, and it's gonna be interesting to see where it goes from here. But it's been quite the ride. So
Absolutely. At what point in your journey have you been like, all right, I'm okay with working with other people, I'm gonna just go ahead and venture off and do my own thing?
Yeah. So that was really around 2020 is when I started to self-release music. Because before that, I was really just reaching out to artists and trying to get connections. And I really didn't even have anybody else to work with until around 2018, 2019. So once I got kind of a good, solid group of people that I was already doing tracks for, I had saw that, a lot of other producers that I was a fan of were self-releasing music or just doing beat tapes and things like that. So I thought it would be a cool thing to do. So I put out some EPs in 2020. It was a series called Life Test that I did, and it was 4 tracks on 3 different EPs. And that was kind of the beginning of it. And then since then, I've just been doing different EPs and single releases, and even doing collabs with other artists too, where my name's on the release. Which obviously is a big thing that can help producers grow their brand and expand the audience and things like that. So it's been about 4 years now of doing the self-release stuff and kind of building up my own catalog that way as well. And it's been super cool. And then now I'm about to put out this first big album in September called Unknown Advantage, which I'm excited about. And that's been a great it's pretty much 2 years in the making at this point, but it's been great to kind of see that come to fruition. Doing the vinyl release for it, doing all kinds of stuff for it, and I'm definitely excited. But yeah, around the time of the pandemic is really when I began to look at myself as a more of an artist too, and just say I can still keep producing for people and do that, and it's cool, but how am I gonna create a brand for myself, and what story do I want to tell? And that's what you're able to do when you release your own music. So that's kind of how that got started.
Yeah, man. I must say that when I was jamming out to your music, it sounds like you're not sampling anything, right? You're making everything from scratch, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of both, honestly, at this point. I still don't, I wouldn't consider myself someone that can play instruments or anybody that's an expert in that sort of thing. I'm pretty much in the box with FL. I have plugins. I use Splice here and there a little bit too, things like that. And I have people that send me stuff too. Like I said about my artist, he'll scour all kinds of different places and send me stuff and say hey, it'd be cool if you made a beat with this or whatever. And I don't always do it. Sometimes he sends me stuff that I'm not really feeling, so I'm I don't want to go there. But if he sends me something that if he sends me something I enjoy, I'm okay, I'll see what I can do. And it's just kind of doing that every day. I tend to make at least 1 or 2 ideas every day, just because you want to keep practicing, you want to keep getting better. Not everything's going to get used, obviously, but it's kind of a mix of both. I used to play guitar when I was younger, and I gave that up. I took guitar lessons when I was a kid, and didn't last very long. I just didn't have the patience for it. So maybe one day I'll get back into that, or maybe want to learn something else. But for now, it's just a little bit of kind of just getting samples or
Yeah.
even working with other instrumentalists too. I got a buddy named Zach Wilson who does piano. He's an incredible artist as well, puts out his own music too. Like I work with people like that and other producers doing collabs. So it's kind of just whatever I feel like the project or song needs, or just like I just want to have fun with it and work with different people or try different things. So yeah, hopefully one day, you know, I can expand the chops a little bit, maybe learn some instruments, and I think that just expands like what you're doing as well, and you can get ideas off a lot quicker. But I
100%.
try to at least make something every day that I feel
Yeah.
good about.
I mean, I started off with sampling, and like the trouble that I was having at first was like, but I can make something so much better, so much faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not really about how fast you can do it. You know what I mean? Doing something by yourself and just like, this is all me, all my production. You know what I mean? It's a prideful feeling, and too, you get paid more money because, you know, you're not having to outreach to somebody else to clear samples and stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes the headaches go away in a lot of instances for sure.
And people will just love working with you because they know how, you know, everything is always from scratch. So it's dope though, man. I'm working on a couple things. I'm gonna try to put together some sample packs with different producers. Definitely would like to invite you to be a part of that if you want to be, you know, part of behind the scenes, or, you know, help grow the community. You know, I definitely appreciate that. As an artist, how do you feel like you found your sound?
Honestly, I still feel like I kind of am still finding it. I think that's what a lot of this new project has been about, is kind of like searching for like what, like I said earlier, about what story do I want to tell, like through the music, and coming up with different concepts as well. I feel like you always get some influence from like people you listen to, or different producers and things like that, or
100%.
artists, depending on if you're an artist. So for me, I think I'm still kind of finding what that is. I feel like what I gravitate toward the most is the melody side of things. Because I know a lot of people, it's like you start with drums and then you build it out from there. I've never been able to start a track with drums ever. Like if I try, I can't, for some reason, I can't do it. I always have to start with like the main melody and just start building around that. So it's usually like keys or guitar or something melodic, kind of get things going and then build from there. But what I want to do with this project and the projects I already have planned after that are my own releases, I want to put out the tracks that mean the most to me, that make me feel some type of real emotion or like trigger some type of memory or something within my own life. So that's really kind of like what I'm trying to do with my own stuff, because I make a lot of music, but not all of it resonates directly to me and like my journey. Like if you're working with someone else and they want you to make a certain type of vibe, you can do it. It doesn't necessarily mean it relates to you and like what your story is. So I want to make that a point of like, when I'm putting out these projects, it has to kind of relate to the music that I've always been a fan of, or the music that resonates the most with me. And then hopefully, you know, I'm putting that out, it'll resonate with someone else. And that's kind of the whole goal of being an artist in general, is just to inspire other people. So that's really the big thing. And the whole theme of this new project is having it's called Unknown Advantage, because it's the unknown advantage that we all have of being able to be creative. Like it's in our human nature to be creative, even if people don't use it, which a lot of people don't. You always have it there, like whether you want to paint or draw or make music or something. Like it's in our DNA to be able to do that, and that's how we express ourselves and express our emotions to the world. So that's really what this music kind of represents. And I wanted to do it in a way where I could tell that story without having to say a word. You know, it's just all instrumentals. So that's really like the theme behind it, and I think that's just what I want to keep doing. And that's how I think I'll let people kind of define what my sound is eventually. Like when I feel like when I have more projects out there, or even now, it's like whatever you want to interpret as like my sound, go ahead. I just feel like I gravitate toward the more emotional stuff, or the stuff that really makes you get lost in thought. That's really what means the most to me. Even if I can still make trap beats or R&B and all that type of stuff, it's like, you know, if I can make something that resonates and like really makes you think about, you know, a point in your life, whether it was good or bad, that's kind of the goal for me.
Well, you heard it, you know, before this meeting. I got lost just kind of listening to your stuff. I was just like, oh shit. Just because I just went from song to song to song, you know what I mean? And before I noticed, I was like, oh shit, it's 1:00. But when you're
that's
working,
good, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have, man.
Yeah.
When you're working on a project, how do you decide when a piece of art is ready to be shared with the world?
Yeah. So to me, I've never really been someone who I wouldn't consider myself a perfectionist or someone that has to just keep working on something forever. I'm kind of like, when it feels good and feels right, let's start planning the release and put it out. The music side definitely always comes first. Like if I can compile the tracks and I sit with them for a bit, I don't sit with them for too long, but if I feel like they all work together in unison and they're all telling that story that I wanted to tell, then I'm like, okay, now we can move forward with the planning, like artwork and release dates, social media content, all that other stuff. But I always just start with the music first because that's really the real reason it's being made to begin with. You got to get the music down and then you can focus on everything else. But really, I don't sit with music or any like type of project that long in general. I kind of just like to make something dope and just keep it moving to the next thing.
Yep.
That's why I got this album coming out, and then I'm already on like the second album after that. That's just how far ahead I am in the planning of like, okay, it feels good. Let me just move on. I don't want to sit and dwell with it because then I'll be like, oh, we might want to change this. It's like, no, let's just move on to the next thing.
But I'm learning that's how you have to be, as an artist, because I mean, like if you sit there and open the door to all of that thinking and don't just like start now, it's never going to come out. It's never going to come out. It's always going to be something that you can put on. And, perfection is pretty much like an illusion. You know what I mean? What's perfect to you may not be perfect to me and vice versa. You know what I mean? So like, it's very good. You've noticed that about yourself and that awareness. Moving like that, your fans are probably pretty happy that, every once in a while they get some new gems from you.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing I've been told, especially in the last couple of years, is just, that I've been very consistent with like what I'm putting out and even on social media, just being able to upload things every day. Everybody's like, I always appreciate the consistency. And I think that comes from being able to not be a perfectionist, because if I was, I wouldn't have consistency at all. So I think it's a good thing to have, and it's just like you got to keep working at it though, because it's always a constant learning process. You're never always going to have it all figured out. You're never going to be in the place where you feel like everything's perfect. You just got to keep moving and so.
Well, I mean, it's not always something that you can tell. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you can resonate with this, but have you ever put something out and was like, this song is gonna hit, and it doesn't hit, and the song that you thought wouldn't hit hits? Like, you know what I mean? As far
I've
as
heard
like
that
on a
from
project.
other artists too.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people will put out a single and they'll want to push that song, and it'll get a decent like response from people. But then when the album drops, they'll get that album cut that really hits with people. Yeah, and it's like they're like, "Wait, where did this come from?"
Yeah,
what
exactly.
I mean? So I've heard that on my show as well. Yeah, I've heard that on my show as well from other artists. Like they did that, and then they got totally surprised by something else. And it's like, that's the thing, you never know until you're putting these songs out. If you're going to sit on them forever, you'll never know what's going to happen. You really just got to keep creating and keep putting it out in the world, and whatever happens. It's kind of how you got to look at it, I think. So
no, I definitely think so. Any books that you've read that changed your life or your perspective on life?
Yeah, so there's a few. I'm trying to think of all the ones recently. I listened to the audiobook of Common just dropped his second book. I forget what it was called. At the beginning of the year, I listened to that. That was very informative. Dillatime, which is a dope book. It's Jay Dilla's autobiography. I have the hard copy, so I'm trying to think of when I read it. That was probably the beginning of like 2023. Really cool book. And then there's a book by Timbaland called Emperor of Sound, which is actually kind of one of the reasons I started producing. I actually got it, like, this was the senior year of high school, and I was like almost about to graduate, but I kept skipping 10th period. So the vice principal ended up throwing me in school suspension, is what it was called, which is basically just detention.
Oh yeah, ISS.
And I remember it was on a Friday, and I had nothing to do. And I remember the guy that he was like the person monitoring everybody. He's like, you got to bring something on Monday to do. So I remember this book just came out, and I'm like, I like Timbaland. Maybe I'll read his book. So I ordered it on Amazon. And so that Monday, the following Monday, I ended up reading that book. And I just kept reading and just being fascinated by like the stories he was telling in the book. And it was really just about like him growing up in Virginia Beach and how he began making music, kind of the things he had to overcome. And I was just like, wow, like he really started from nothing, kind of just build up to what he is now. And it just really inspired me. And then a few months later is when I end up start producing myself. So it's like just kind of crazy things like that. It's like if I wasn't even in that scenario, would I have even ordered that book at all? I don't know. It's like I knew it existed, but I wasn't on the burner of my mind to be like, oh, let me get this book. I just got it because I needed something to do. And then it ends up being like, oh wow, that really was a spark of inspiration. And then it led to something that was life changing. You know what I mean? So
that's
like the things that happen that are kind of unexpected, that are like, it's almost like happy accidents. So yeah, those are some books that definitely come to mind. But I'm always looking for new books too to read. And I've been listening to more audiobooks, like I said recently, like Common's book, but it kind of just depends on how I want to consume what they're doing. But I'm always looking for good reads. I've always been a reader ever since I was a kid, so love reading books.
Definitely check out The Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
I did.
I feel like you'll definitely enjoy that. Yeah.
That was another audiobook that I'm glad you reminded me of that, because that was another audiobook that I did, I think, this winter. As I listened to that one as well.
Yeah,
I do want to
definitely
get
gonna want to get the hard copy so you can keep it in the studio. Like the way that I use it like going into a session. I'll read a little bit and then just like kind of remind myself there's really no limit. Like, don't place any box upon like whatever you're trying to create. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I loved hearing the audiobook too, because he's the one narrating, and I'm like, his voice, man, I'm just like, this is so
I'm gonna
soothing.
try that out.
This is like meditation. Yeah, it's really cool because he's the one that's actually narrating the book.
Did you listen to it straight?
So, yeah. No, I think I broke it up into like a few different weeks. I kind of was just listening like when I had time, like after work or like on the weekend or whatever. So, but I do want to get the hard copy as well. So yeah, we'll kind of experience it in reverse, I think. So.
Yeah. That's dope. How do you feel like music has changed your life forever?
Yeah, I mean, well, man, I don't know what I'd do without it. You probably feel the same way. I mean, when you start making, or even when you start listening as a fan, you're just like, wow, this is like something that you can't experience anywhere else. And just the lessons you learn through music, just as a listener, as a fan, the things that you take and apply to your own life. And then when you start creating music, you're able to give that back to someone else. So really being able to create and do those things for me has just been super life-changing. And I think that every day, like, how blessed am I to be able to even do that when there's, people in the world that don't have access to even be able to make music or even be able to have a voice. It's like you're just blessed to be able to do that. So no matter what happens on your journey, you have this voice, you have this chance to do something good and give back. And it's really a responsibility too, to be able to do that. So man, I'm just super grateful, and definitely do not want to do anything else. Like, I don't want to be a lawyer, don't want to be a doctor. Like, literally dropped out of community college after 4 semesters. I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm just going to build it up myself and see what happens. And I know that it's a risk, and you gotta take risks to get where you want to go. But it's like, man, I can't envision myself being in an office, like a corner office, talking to someone at a water cooler. I just can't do it, man. Like, I'm just not built like that. And I always tell people the same thing. It's like, you gotta listen to what's right for you. No matter what anybody else is telling you. If it feels right, you gotta just pursue it. And no matter what happens, you're gonna feel good because you listen to that inner voice. So for me, that's definitely what music has been, and hopefully what it continues to be. If I ever get tired of it, I'll do something else that I like to do. And that's just kind of what we got to do as human beings, is just kind of chase that inner voice and do you know what I mean? So that's really what 100%. I've been doing, I think.
What sacrifices do you feel like you made to get where you are right now?
definitely, being able to see friends, being able to see family and things like that. I think luckily for me, I'm not really a super social person. I'm more of an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the type of person that, if I'm talking about things that I enjoy, or like, if I feel like I have something to add to the conversation, I can talk all day. But if someone's trying to small talk or do things like that, I can't do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like I don't
Peopling
like
takes
go out
energy
there.
for real.
Yeah, for sure. It's like the social battery, goes away and things like that. And I'm not like, I don't go to clubs, I don't drink, smoke, do any of that stuff myself. I've just never done that. So I've always kind of just been locked into like, what do I like to do? How do I like
Yeah.
to express myself? So
Mhm.
I've actually never really had a ton of things distracting me from what I've wanted to do. So I think for a lot of people, it's like when they want to be creative, they have those other things that are calling them to be like,
Mhm.
hey, come do this, be do, whatever. But and it's like I still have my close group of friends that, I've known them for, 8, 9 years or more. But everybody, when you grow up, people have jobs, they get married, they do other things. So it's like, regardless, I'm not going to see those people as much anyway. So
Mhm.
I'm just kind of focused on like what I'm doing, and then when we see each other, we see each other, and it's cool,
Yep.
and we still talk now and then. It's all love. It's not like we, are never going to talk ever again. But I think luckily for me, I haven't really had to make a ton of sacrifices other than, how do you schedule your day? Like, how do
Mhm.
are you going to go to sleep early tonight? Are you going to stay up later? You know what I mean? Things like that, that it's like the ordinary person would go to the 9 to 5, be done, and then that's it. They could do what they want with the rest of their day. For me, it's like go to the 9 to 5, come back, and I'm working strictly on music. I work before and I'm working after. It's always plotting, or even at the job, just doing, trying to plot shit as much as I can. So,
Mhm.
yeah, but I think luckily I haven't really had to make a ton of sacrifices just because I've been able to mold what I do around that, and my lifestyle was already fit to be able to do it, I think, which is
Yeah.
nice. So, yeah.
How do you handle creative block?
Creative block, honestly, just really taking breaks, going on a walk, or just going and hanging with my friends when I'm able to, or,
Mhm.
just talking to people, doing things that aren't related to music and creativity. And I've heard that from a lot of other people too, that that's kind of their method, where you go, you live life, then you get that inspiration through life, and
Yeah.
then you come back, and then you'll be able to create better. So it's definitely been the same for me too. Unfortunately, I live in Ohio, so I can't always go outside all the time. Like
Mhm.
this time of year, I can, but not in the winter time, not things like that. But even during the winter time, if I face some type of block, or I feel like something's kind of holding me up, and it's not really working out, I just set it to the side and just go do something else. You
Mhm.
can get frustrated, you can get like pissed off, and then it's just going to affect the whatever you're making, the song, the
Yeah.
artwork. It's going to affect what you're doing. So instead of doing that, you got to just put it to the side and say, I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this and see what happens when I do. So that's really what it's been for me as well. Is just take that break, come back, and usually when you do that, you'll find that inspiration to keep going and make whatever you're making a lot better. But
Mhm.
yeah,
What do you feel like was your biggest investment in music besides
biggest
time?
investment besides time, probably gear. Even though I mean, I don't think I have spent as much as a lot of people have on gear. Um, but definitely gear, and just investing in really in myself, honestly, and just finding the
Mhm.
places where that makes sense. Because I think early on, you're just eager to get seen by everybody, or just get heard by everybody, and you're
Mhm.
throwing money at things you don't even need to be throwing money at.
Yeah.
But then when you start honing your skills a little bit more, you can do things on your own too. That helps. But then you get kind of a clear vision of like, what do you actually want to do, and how do you want to tell your story, so you're able to allocate money where it needs to go.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously everyone's situations are different, 'cause some people have a lot less money than other people do.
Mhm.
But I think you just got to do your best in those instances. But I think just being able to invest in myself has been the biggest thing that's honestly helped me in the long run. And you got to be your biggest advocate before anybody else does too,
Yeah.
because before you have a team or before you have anybody looking out for you, you have yourself. So you just got to know what you want and just go for it, and just see what happens.
100%. Who do you feel like is your top inspiration as far as production wise?
Yeah, I definitely have a good list of producers that I'm a fan of. I always say that Hit Boy is one of my biggest influences, just because I follow his music since I think like 2011 or 2012, when he was making music for like Kanye and Jay-Z and people like that back then. And just to see him like grow as a producer and as an artist, and then do like the 6 albums with Nas, things like that. It's like I would have never guessed he would have done that back then. And I've actually been able to connect with people from his camp as well. His engineer David Kim, I've had him on my show. I've had his cousin JB. I actually just got to talk to him again this week. So I know people kind of involved with him, the situation, but I've always been a fan of his sound and just kind of how genuine he is and how he approaches music all together, and just his diversity too, and the amount of genres he's been able to produce, and the artists he's worked for as well. It's just admirable for sure, and he always just puts out amazing content, amazing music. So
he's one of those ones.
Like one of the top ones. Yeah, absolutely. Honestly. So.
Anybody else that inspire you production wise?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I listen to a lot of people. I think Apollo Brown is another producer in the last few years that I've really been listening to a lot of his stuff. And he's another producer that really, puts out a lot on his own too. Like he'll produce full albums for artists and put his name on it and attach it to different things. I saw he just launched an app that is pretty cool, so he can kind of connect with his fans directly, which I thought was a really cool thing to do. But I just love his sound. It's old school, boom bap, classic hip hop, and just like the way he samples is incredible. Like there's certain producers that are just incredible at sampling, and he's one of the best in my opinion, even if he doesn't get talked about as much as some other people. Like his chops are insane. I'm just like, I don't even know how you would do this. And he does, I forget what program he uses, but it's a program from like the early 2000s, like something that not a lot of people would use. And you would not expect it when you hear his music, because you're like, he probably used the MPC or like the SP404 or something. Yeah. But no, he used like one of the, I'm not gonna say the worst programs, but one program that I would probably never use, honestly. But like he works, I got to think of what it is, because I've seen interviews where he talks about it, but I'm just like mind blown. And he still has the same like version, because they stopped making updates for it. So he still has like a version from like 03 or something crazy like that. But yeah, it's just admirable to see like how he does so much with so little, honestly. But yeah, he's just incredibly talented, and yeah, I'm a huge fan of his sound. He's someone that I probably listen to at least once a day, on average. Like I listen to his music all the time. So yeah, there's a couple people that come to mind, I think. So
that's dope. I could definitely hear it in your music as far as like sound selection and the way you piece things together. Everything is just like full circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't leave you, some producers, it leaves you like, damn, it's missing something, or like, I could hear this or whatever, but yours always sound complete. Yeah. Like every composition that I noticed, I didn't feel like needed anything, honestly. I felt like it was something that needed to be sampled. You know what I mean? So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I honestly was that, like, man. I could sample that too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's all about finding the balance too, and I definitely feel like I'm still miles away from where I want to be, like skill wise, or even just like where I want the sound to be. I still feel like I'm still feel like a beginner, honestly. I really do. I mean, like I said, I'm 8 years in, but I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface of like what I can do if I just keep going and keep getting better. But yeah, just seeing that improvement is really like what motivates you to keep going as well. Because you can look back on what you did like 5 years ago and you see the improvement to what you're making now. And that's just more reason to keep it up and I always appreciate when people give a listen to. So, thank you for doing that. That
Yeah,
means a
no
lot.
doubt. No doubt, man. No doubt. I want to ask you if you can give your younger self some advice when starting out chasing this dream, what would it be and why?
Yeah. I always ask this on my podcast as well. And I get a lot of cool responses. I think for me, it's really just bet on yourself. That would be my advice. Because, like I said earlier, you get in and you try to be heard and seen by everybody, and you're chasing things that you think you want, that you see somebody else having, and you think you have an idea of what it is to do this, but you actually have no idea what it is to do this. So you really got to just take your time, bet on yourself, invest in yourself, and just, have the clear vision to make it happen, and have a lot of patience too. That's another big thing, because I think, everybody's pretty impatient with what they want, and, they want to get their goals immediately, but, these goals take time. They take a lot of work too. So just a little bit of mixing all those things together. That's really what I would tell myself. And I just tell myself that now, because, you always have new goals. You always have new things you're trying to get to. And you got to remind yourself, like, no, we got to stay grounded in what we've been doing, because it's been working. You know what I mean? You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. You want to plan. You want to plan ahead, but you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. Just stay grounded, stay focused, and just keep working. That's really what I would tell myself.
Absolutely. No, that's perfect right there. Before we get out of here, man, is there anything you want to say? Anything you're working on coming soon?
Yeah. So, like I said, that album Unknown Advantage, it's going to be available for early listen on a platform called Even. So basically, you'll be able to pay $2 or more just to hear it early, and then it's going to be coming to all streaming platforms on September 27th. So, tap in on Instagram with me at Anthony_Church24. That's really where I am primarily. But a lot more music, even outside of that. Working on collab projects, different singles for the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
My podcast is the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Definitely check that out if you're looking for another great show. But man, I want to say to you, thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
No doubt, bro.
If you want to come on my show, man, I would love to have you on as a guest in the future. Just let me know if you're down for that. But keep doing your thing. I'm excited to hear this episode. I'm excited to hear the other episodes you're working on as well. And check out more of your music too, because I could tell you're putting in a lot of work and doing a lot of awesome things too. So, thank you again for the chance to be here, man. So.
No doubt. I appreciate you, man.